Hey there, and welcome. Today, we are cracking open one of the most famous and maybe one of the most fundamental algorithms in all of machine learning, K-means clustering. Have you ever wondered how a service like Netflix just knows what movies you might like? Or how a grocery store figures out what to put on sale? It all starts with this really big question. When you're faced with just a mountain of raw, unlabeled data, how on earth do you start to make sense of it? How do machines find those patterns that our own eyes might just miss? Well, the answer is actually pretty intuitive. Instead of trying to analyze every single piece of data one by one, which would be impossible, they do something smarter. They look for the secret groups, the natural little communities that are already hiding inside the data. And that whole process, that's what we call clustering. So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the why, the clustering challenge itself. Then we'll pop the hood and see what's inside the K-means algorithm. We'll walk through a real example, step by step. And then we'll get into the juicy stuff, the hidden flaws of K-means, and finally, how to get around them. Okay, first things first, what is this clustering challenge? What's the actual problem that an algorithm like K-means was even built to solve? The goal really is to automatically group similar things together. I want you to imagine you've just been handed a giant, messy pile of Lego bricks. Your job is to sort them. But here's the catch. Nobody told you how to sort them. Should you do it by color, by size, by shape? That's exactly what clustering algorithms do. And because we aren't giving the machine any answers ahead of time, no labels, this is what we call unsupervised learning. The machine has to figure it out all on its own.
All right, let's open up that black box. It's time to see how the K-means algorithm actually works its magic.
So at its heart, K-means is what's known as a partition-based algorithm. Now that's just a fancy way of saying it literally chops up your data into a specific number of groups. That number is what we call K. The means part of the name comes from its main objective. It wants to make everything inside each group as similar as possible. And it does that by constantly looking at the group's average, or its mean. So how does an algorithm know if it's doing a good job? Well, it gives itself a score. This score is often called inertia, or the sum of squared errors. The easiest way to think about it is as a measure of how tight the clusters are. A really good cluster, one with a low score, has all its data points packed in super close to the center. A sloppy, spread-out cluster gets a high score. The algorithm has one single-minded goal: get that score as low as you possibly can. And how does it get that low score? Through a beautifully simple and really powerful little loop. First, you initialize. You tell it, K, how many clusters you're looking for, and you just randomly drop that many starting points, we call them centroids, onto your data. Then you assign every single data point to whichever centroid is closest. Step 3, you update. You move each centroid to the new average location of all the points that just joined its team. And then you just repeat. Assign, update, over and over until the groups stop changing. Now, to put that all together into a definition you could, use on an exam, K-means is an iterative, partition-based clustering algorithm that minimizes the distance within clusters by just doing two things over and over again: assigning points to their nearest centroid and then updating those centroids to their new mean. Okay, theory is one thing, but seeing is believing, right? Let's make this concrete with a step-by-step example. We're literally going to watch the algorithm think. So here's our little playground. We've got just 5 data points on a simple 2D graph. We've decided we want to find 2 clusters, so our K is 2. Now for that initialization step, we've got to start somewhere. So let's just pick 2 of our actual data points to be our starting centroids. We'll call them mu1, which will start at 1, 1, and mu2, which will start over at 4, 1. Okay, iteration number 1. Let's go. First, the assign step. The algorithm goes to every point and asks, who are you closer to, mu1 or mu2? It turns out 2 points stick with the first cluster and the other 3 join the second one. Next step, the update step. Each centroid gets pulled toward the new average of its members. So you can see mu1 gets nudged over to 1.25, 1.5, and mu2 gets pulled up and to the left to 3.67, 2.50. Right now, our total error score, that tightness measure, is 5.27. Let's run that loop again. Iteration 2. We reassign every point based on where the centroids just moved to. And, this time, no points actually switch teams, but we still have to do the update step. The average for that first cluster hasn't changed, but the second cluster's centroid moves just a tiny bit to 3.83, 2.50. But look at our objective score. It went down. It's now 4.46.
That's a good thing. It means our clusters are getting tighter, they're getting better.
So after that second update, we'd run the assign step one last time, just to be sure. But this time, nothing happens. Absolutely no data points switch their allegiance. The groups are totally stable. The centroids aren't going to move anymore. The algorithm has found its final answer. In other words, it has converged. So K-means seems pretty great, right? It's simple, it's fast, it makes sense. But here comes the plot twist. Because like any tool, it has some pretty serious hidden flaws. So now it's time to look at when a good algorithm can sometimes go bad. This table really nails the main issues. First, where you start matters, a lot. A bad random starting point can actually cause the algorithm to find just an okay solution instead of the best one. It gets stuck in what we call a local optimum. Second, you have to tell it K, how many clusters to look for. And if you guess wrong, you might accidentally merge two totally different groups or split one perfect group right in half. And finally, it is shockingly sensitive to outliers. A single weird data point can drag a centroid way off into the middle of nowhere, messing up the entire group. And this really gets to the heart of the problem. There's a big-time mismatch between what the algorithm assumes and what the real world looks like. See, K-means is built for a world where data forms these perfect, neat little spherical clusters. But real-world data? It's often messy, it's elongated, it's clumpy, it has different densities. And that's exactly where K-means can start to fall apart. And just to really hammer home that point about outliers, just how bad can it be? Well, research has shown that in some situations, a single outlier, one bad data point, can cause the algorithm to produce a final result that is 20 times worse than the best possible solution. One point can literally wreck the whole thing. But, okay, don't worry, it is not all bad news, not at all. These problems are super well known. And for pretty much every problem, data scientists have come up with some really clever solutions. So let's look at how we can move beyond just the basic K-mean. Think of this slide as your practical toolkit. Worried about getting a bad starting point? You can use a smarter initialization method called K-means++, or just run the whole thing multiple times and pick the best result. Not sure what number to pick for K? There are techniques like the elbow method that can help you find that sweet spot. And what if your data just isn't shaped like spheres? Well, it might be time to use a totally different algorithm, like DBCAN, which is awesome at finding clusters with weird shapes. So what's the big takeaway here? I think this quote sums it up perfectly. K-means is popular for a really good reason. It's simple, it's fast, and when your data actually has those nice compact groups, it works like a charm. All of its weaknesses, they're really just the price you pay for that beautiful simplicity. And that leaves us with one final question to chew on. In a world full of incredibly complex and powerful algorithms, what's the place for something simple? If an algorithm is fast, but you know it's flawed, when is it actually the smart choice to use it? When is good enough truly good enough?